Here's a reel that some of you may not be familiar with. This is, well, you can call it a single action reel, a knuckle buster, direct drive. They're all kind of the same. This is a 19, well, I'm not sure the exact year this one was made, but this reel is a Langley Lubricast 330, which came out in 1948. What's really interesting about these reels is they're all aluminum construction. This thing was super popular with bass fishermen back like in the post-World War II era. Up until the ambassador came to the shores in the United States, this was the kid that you wanted. A lightweight ported spool, which you can't see because I have 10-pound braided nylon on here. All aluminum construction, like I was saying, and the overall simplicity of this thing is something else. So what I'm going to do today is show you guys how to tune a knuckle buster. I know they're super cheap nowadays in general. You can go to like garage sales, estate sales, antique shops, and I mean there's just tons of them out there, but Langley's are the ones that I like the most just because as they are, they're already very well suited to casting lighter lures. This one right here, I mean, it'll cast 1/8 of an ounce, no problem. I'm actually, I have some spools that should be here at some point that a gentleman in Japan has made for me, along with some shorter handles. He does 3D print them. The cost on them is like super cheap, so not something I'd use for bass fishing, but on the trout streams or maybe even ice fishing or something like that, I would have at it. But I'm going to show you how simple these things are inside. There's really not much to it. Here's the spool. You can't really see the porting, but I do have a damaged one from a reel that I bought, but here's what it looks like out of the factory. Well, minus that crease that's in there. Whoever owned this one last, they probably tied the line around it. The fish ran all the way to the bottom of the spool and just put a nice crease in there. But this one's in my junk bin. No use for it right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and take this apart. Pretty filthy in there. I'll show you what I use to lubricate these, because I do it differently from something like a reel that has an anti-reverse or that kind of thing. But I'm going to continue here taking this all apart. There's just a couple of bridge screws. And when I take this off, you're going to see that there isn't much there. But that's what's great about these, is the simplicity, and these actually cast pretty well. I mean, even though there's no braking system, the lightweight spool on here really makes it easier to control. But after we remove the side plate, there's our bushing. I'm actually going to remove the mechanical brake, as they call it. Even Langley, they tell you more or less, depending on which way you turn it, on or off. This is the kind of reel that you do set up the traditional way, where you go ahead and adjust with the spool tension as the lure drops, since there's no centrifugal brake, no magnetic brake. But fairly easy to go through, getting all greasy from this one. I'll show you what I use for the grease on these. I mean, the Langley manuals that came with these, I actually had one in a reel that I just sold not long ago, but it said to use grease on the gears, of course. But thing about these, since you have the handle to contend with, you have to be very choosy on the type of grease that you're going to use. You can, of course, you can use something that's going to give a smooth feel, but you want these things to be as free as possible. Like back when they came out, guys would aim for a 5-second free spool, which doesn't sound like much, but at the time that was pretty good. And also consider that these Langley spools, without line on it, this thing only weighs a whole 15 grams, which is it's about the same weight as a 100 size Shimano MGL spool today. Like, Langley was the first company to make and market an aluminum ported spool. There was nothing else like it at the time, and there was nothing else like it up until Shimano brought it back in the early 2000s with, I think it was their MGL spools is where they did that. But I've already gone through and polished this thing in the past, so I'm just doing a really basic overhaul to it. Nothing special, just going to go ahead and clean everything up. Here's the level line gear. As you can see, it's pressed in, so this doesn't come out. And the way I like to clean that is, being that TSI is a penetrant as well as a lube, I just like to flood this thing, get a whole bunch in there, and I'll spin it around and then go take it to the air compressor, blow out whatever is left in there, because you want this thing to spin as freely as possible. I just need to go ahead and wipe off the old oil on the drive shaft stud. Got all that off, and then let's see how this thing is. Not too bad. And what's interesting about Langley is they started out with what they were famous for before fishing reels is they made bomber components, like for aircraft during World War II. And when the war ended, the owners of the company, they said, you know, we don't have anything to do anymore. And the three of them were avid fishermen, and they just started making fishing reels. And these were way more advanced than anything else at the time. Okay, we got that all that blown out of there, all that TSI. You can see where some of it kind of blew all over the wishbone on there. Just going to go ahead and wipe that off. Spins pretty good. Just got to dab all the rest off of there. Go ahead and scrub this worm gear a little bit. With my cleaner of choice, mineral spirits. Gets all the crap off. Alright, so we got clean worm gear. That's good. What else too is there's this little bushing at the end of the level line pipe. So this thing, if I can get it, you can see it's a little dirty in there, but not too bad. I'm just going to take a Q-tip and dip it in, and I'll go ahead and run it on in there. Get all the stuff out. Not as dirty as I thought it was going to be, but that's alright. Then what I'm going to do after is put a little, actually I'm going to do it the same way that I do other ones. I'm just going to kind of soak this up a little bit with some TSI, the Wonder Oil. I mean, it's pretty good stuff. I'll go ahead and stick that Q-tip in there, wipe it around. You can see it even got whatever leftover dirt was in there, which is exactly what we want. I can go ahead and situate that back on there. I'll take some TSI and run it up in here. Rub it around. And back to the air compressor to get rid of the leftovers. Now, the thing when you fish with a direct drive reel, it's always, you have three things to account for. You have the spool, as well as the handle, and like I said before, you have no anti-reverse. So these things, they really make you pay attention to what you're doing. Not that they're hard to cast, but when you get into actually fighting a fish and everything, it's full on manual mode. There's no drag, there's no anti-reverse, and you're fully in control of what that fish is doing. If you go too hard on it, you might break off. If you get something really big, you're gonna have to hold on to that handle and possibly back reel. It's quite an experience compared to something more modern. Makes me think too, because the world record muskie was caught in 1939, I want to say, in Wisconsin, on a South Bend Perfectorino, which is it's a direct drive like this is. It's a heavier one though, and it was a 69-pound, 11-ounce muskie. And imagine fighting that thing and bringing it to the net versus something like a Calcutta Conquest or a Lexa or something like that. There's just that guy who, I can't remember his name, but you have to really think of the technique involved in order to land a fish that big on something like this. He was probably, I can imagine the fight lasting a long time, and him trying to not muscle it in so he wouldn't break off, but I'm sure it was a hell of an experience either way. Whoever catches the next world record muskie, they're going to have a cakewalk compared to what this guy did. Alright, now time to put the level line back in. We have our TSI on there, and I'm just going to go ahead and slide that on. Get it in that groove up top. And try and finagle this thing back into the frame. Alright, now I can go ahead and get these 4 screws back on, along with this trim ring. Langley also makes a, I actually have one, I'll put it up in a second. They made they had the Streamlight, which was more the general purpose reel that they made at the time. It's not a narrow spool like this is, but it has the same kind of spool architecture, and it too is a very capable reel. It's just wider. It's kind of like, picture a 1500C versus a 2500C. The Lubricast would be more like the 1500C, and the Streamlight would be much more like the 2500C, just because of the width. Alright, now we got that all back together right there. So now what I'm going to do, clean out this drive shaft and then the drive gear. And what I like to, the kind of grease I use on these knuckle busters, so they perform their best, is I don't use normally I use super lube, but super lube's a little too tacky. You want something that's going to slide good but also provide a lot of protection, because when you're actually fighting a fish with a reel like this, there's a lot of stress on all that stuff just because they're not having the drag, and you're trying to hold on to it and ensure the fish isn't running off on you, and a lot of variables to consider. So what I do is I use a grease with a moly disulfide additive in it, which is the same kind of stuff you use for like engine assembly for a car or a truck or something like that, because the moly disulfide, it fills in the pores in the metal but also has a very high shear capability. So it's going to be a very, very stable grease, and the way you apply it is you apply it very, very sparingly. Like, I'll show you after I clean up this drive shaft how it's done. I'm off camera here just scrubbing down these gears. Make sure they're all nice and clean, because if they're a little bit dirty, that's gonna affect some stuff. Just going through and cleaning out the inside of this thing. You can see wasn't too bad in there. I can come back and pull the other side through to get whatever was left behind. Okay, so now is where the fun starts. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of moly grease. And the idea with this stuff is you just apply just to where there's a little bit of a haze on there. Like if you see more than a haze, you have too much. So what I'm doing, I'm just going right in between all the teeth. And the stuff does have a pretty pungent odor to it. But even if you just see a slight haze, it's definitely on there. I mean, this stuff is really, really good for protecting metal. Something I was going to experiment with, but I haven't gotten around to it yet, is I was going to try a little hazing at the tips of the spool shaft where they contact the thrust washers. They're in the end plates, in the head plate and the tail plate, but it's been doing pretty good, just a little bit of TSI in there. These reels do come with a felt ring that goes inside of those areas, that they're basically oil reservoirs, and I feel like with the TSI using it, that I didn't even need to use those things. So what I'm going to do now is put a little bit of TSI on here, not much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a swab and just wipe it, because it doesn't, you don't want that stuff to run everywhere. You don't want it to contaminate the grease that you're using. Sometimes these lubricants, they can react negatively with each other, and I've had it happen at times where something will go back together and the grease will say, "Oh yeah, you introduced something different in here, I'm going to turn into putty on you." It's happened to me a few times, not commonality, but that's life. And then there's the drive shaft down on there. Next, I'm actually going to pull that drive shaft back off of there so it's easier to apply the grease. Get a little more of this stuff. You can just, it looks like I'm doing a lot, but I'm just trying to basically get a little bit in there and then get it out right after. Remember, you just want a little hazing in there, not a ton, but just enough to where it's going to form a little barrier in it. I can get through, and there's not a, I don't know how easy it is to see on camera, but as I'm doing this, I can see the haze develop on the brass, which is what I want. Just come here. A little of this goes a very long way. So when I'm getting some out, I'm like trying to get like a grain of rice size on here. But this stuff does work so good for these kinds of reels. I wouldn't use it on something like a more modern style, but for this is where it's at. And after I'm done, I'm going to show you what I mean. Just trying to get that application going on there. Get rid of all the excess that's in between those teeth, that as I see it. There's a little bit right there. Okay, I think we can call that done. Now, we can go ahead and drop this down onto that, and next, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clean out these bushings just a little bit. Let me grab myself another Q-tip. Now these bushings are very small, so I do have some foam swabs that fit perfectly in there, but I misplaced them somewhere or another, so it's going to be at another time when I can do that. I'm just running it in there. You can see all the crap that was in it. You could see the polish job I did on that in the past. That's why this thing flies. I'm actually going to do that to the palm side as well. But you can see a little thrust washer in there. I'm just going to put a little drop of oil in there too. As soon as I clean that out. I'm just kind of rolling the Q-tip between my fingers so I can get it in here and twist it around. Something you notice with these is they have a clicker. Well, it's not a clicker in the traditional sense like you see on reels today where it's a line out alarm. All the clicker does here is it functions as a way to park your lure. So when you're done fishing, you put your hook in the keeper and hit the clicker on it, and it's not going to back out on you. While I'm here, I'm going to take the spool shaft, wipe that down good, so we get rid of any kind of crap that might be on it. And we have the steel pinning gear that I need to scrub real quick. Now these things come from a time when stuff was meant to be maintained, which is why you still see them in use all around. They're especially popular in Japan now because topwater bass fishing and stream trout fishing are very popular over there now with the old American-made direct drive reels. Over here, not so much. I think here people just say that's old technology, it's not going to do much, which I fully understand that as well. But something you don't see mentioned very often, especially here, is how much fun these things are. It's a whole different ball game to fish something the way your grandparents, great-grandparents may have. It really, at the same time, not only is it fun, but it makes you appreciate how far we have come in the last 80 years with this stuff. Put a little bit of the moly grease on the spool pinion, drop that on, and this thing does normally have a copper C-clip that goes on there, but I just use an O-ring, it's easier, and I got a bunch of them, so it's not going anywhere. And the O-ring holds that in. We're good. Now I can take and drop the spool in. Actually, I do need to put a little bit of oil. I'm going to put a little teeny tiny drop right in there. And another one on that thrust washer, so that's good. Then what else I'm going to do is I'm just going to oil the spool shaft where it makes contact with the bushing. So I'm just going to work my way around here with that, and then back over here as well, because that's going to give it that ultra slick surface that we need. I can take and drop that back in. And now take this, and then I can drop the worm gear in. Now we're going to take and marry this back together. Take my bridge screws. Now the beauty with these is their simplicity, and when you have a fish on the line, it's unlike anything most people have done, unless you're older and have grown up with these types of reels. Okay, so now I gotta put the side plate screws on. Hopefully we could watch this thing fly in a minute here. I was showing this to one of my friends yesterday, and he's a big sturgeon fisherman, and he goes, "You should try something like that for sturgeon." And I said, "No, that is something I'm definitely not going to do." Okay, so with that, I need to let me clean this pawl up a little bit. Something I didn't do, but it needs to be done. And what's neat about these too is I found out reading on a Japanese website is the ambassador line guides, they fit these Langleys with slight modification because the pawl's very similar. It's just taller than the ambassador models. And with what I could do is get like an Avail line guide, which weighs substantially less than this. This one here weighs about 6 grams. The Avail line guide weighs like a little over 1.5, and that would make it a lot better, just because these things are so sensitive to everything, just because it's all coupled together in one thing. Now I'm actually going to use tweezers to set this in because I can't get a good angle on it. Drop that in there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a teeny tiny drop of TSI on the bottom there. I forgot to put some in the cap there. It actually looks pretty dirty in there, so I'm just going to clean that out real quick just to get any kind of crap out of there that we don't need to worry about. Okay, we got it. Now, I'm going to set this one up in here. And now, something with the Langleys, this palm side, this one you tighten all the way down. You don't have to put a wrench on there or anything to do it, you just finger tighten it down. Because that's going to, the spool's already centered. And then we're going to take this, the tensioner, it has a little wire around it that gives it positive resistance when you turn it. If I can get it. There we go. Check the wiggle there. Back it off. Just I want to show you how much these things actually fly. And I'll go ahead and put the handle back on. There we go. Now, moves pretty good. Let's get it all the way to the end. That's how you want one of these to move. Now, am I going to cast it like that? No, but I'm just showing you with zero spool tension, there's no end tension on this, but if I turn it up in accordance with the lure, just as an example, and see it doesn't spin as freely. But I'm just showing how this tension cap right here is everything with these reels. That's your brake. No centrifugal, no magnets. You can modify these for magnets and run zero tension. That's a subject for another video, but as they are like this, I mean, you can take it right to a trout stream. You can do some topwater bass fishing, whatever you want. There's about 50 yards of 10-pound braided nylon on here that I got from a company local here in Michigan called Mason Tackle Company, and they're the only line maker around that I'm aware of that actually makes anything like this that's of that weight. Most places, some guys will use fly backing, which is like lamp cord compared to this stuff, and honestly this stuff is pretty thick too, even compared to modern braid and monofilament, but that's what you have to run on these. You can always backfill with some of this and tie off some like 1.0 or 1.5 go polyethylene on there, which is modern braid, to your own leader, which a lot of people do, but they're just a lot of fun, and you can find these things anywhere, especially, like I said, garage sales, estate sales, tackle shows, you can find them for $5 or $10 and have a ball with them. But thank you very much for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed a little tutorial on how to tune a knuckle buster. Thanks.